Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. As always, I'm your host, Chris, and this is a show about all things movies and TV. Got another awesome episode for you today. We're going to start part one of our Lord of the Rings Extended Edition series with the Fellowship of the Ring. It's a trilogy that I've been excited to do for the podcast for a while now, and we're finally here. We're going to do the Fellowship of the Ring today. And then on the next episode, we will cover the Two Towers extended edition, and then we will cap off the trilogy with the Return of the King extended edition. Sometime next year, we're going to cover the Hobbit films on that schedule, so that'll be exciting. But I wanted to do the Lord of the Rings movies first, since they came out canonically first in theaters back in the early 2000s. So super excited to cover this beloved franchise finally on the show. I'll be doing some of my experiences with the movie. I haven't read the books, so just kind of a forewarned warning before we start. I have not read the books. I have only read the Hobbit book. So I'll be covering some of the book changes that I did a lot of research for in preparation for the show today. But most of my review will be just strictly the films, since I have not really had any context with the books whatsoever. I do plan on reading those books eventually, but for now, for today, it'll be just the review of the books. So do not come attack me for not. And if I do get anything wrong with the book lore or anything like that, let me know. You can reach out to me on any of the social media pages. I've only done a little bit of the research that I can for the show, so I am going to maybe get some things wrong as far as the lore, the characters, the story, some of the changes. I only found about 10 that I could actually confirm were changes from the book to the films. So that'll be a shorter list, and there probably is 100 different things that they changed or left out of the movies just for time's sake. But we'll get into all that later. Some reminders at the top of the episode: you can follow the show on Facebook, X, and Instagram. I post a lot of stuff on there. I just posted a post about Robert Redford, who unfortunately passed away. That news broke very shortly ago, before I started recording. Robert Redford, you probably recognize him from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, is probably what he's most known for. He did appear in the MCU as Alexander Pierce in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think he had a brief appearance or mention in Endgame as well. But Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is probably what he's most known for, and then probably The Natural as well. He's was a beloved actor, director, activist, philanthropist. He started the Sundance, The Sundance Film Institute. So that is something that he was heavily involved in. But for the most part, he's remembered as the actor Robert Redford. He was born on August 18th, 1936, and then tragically passed away today, September 16th, 2025, at his home in Utah. He talked a lot about how he loved the mountain ranges in Utah, so that is where he has resided for many, many years. And he died at the age of 89. So thoughts and prayers to Robert Redford's family, friends, and anybody that did know him personally. So you can watch the show every week on youtube.com/The Cinematic Reviews. You can also listen to the audio version on whatever listening platform you prefer: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, all that. So take a look at the old archives on the audio side. So let's head over to some news and reactions. I've got 3 reactions to go over, since it's been a while since I've recorded. So I've got 3 reactions for you today. We're going to go over the Wednesday Season 2 Part 2, which is now out on Netflix. Working Man starring Jason Statham, which is currently on Amazon Prime. And then The Conjuring: Last Rites starring Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga is the final chapter in the Conjuring series. That is currently in theaters now. Wednesday Season 2 was a bit of a bummer, at least in my opinion. Season 1, when that dropped back out in 2022, took everyone by storm. When it dropped on Netflix, it was a phenomenon. Jennifer Ortega, who had already been a pretty big star at that point, became an even bigger star. Um, Tim Burton, the beloved Tim Burton, still at it again, pulling out masterpieces. Even though season 2 was a bit lower in quality than season 1, it's still a pretty good season to watch. I love the Wednesday character. I love Jenna Ortega's portrayal of Wednesday. It's probably my favorite role of hers so far in her career, even though she has been a part of a lot of really big projects. Seems like she is Tim Burton's new Johnny Depp in a way. Um, but yeah, it's still a really good season, just not quite on the same level as season 1, and that tends to be um, part of the, I guess, way that these series go, especially Netflix. I mean, even Stranger Things. I don't think it's hard to beat that first season of Stranger Things, to use them as an example. It did start to get better, in season 3, season 4, and then we'll see what happens in season 5 of Stranger Things. But a lot of these series, it's just the first season is such a huge phenomenon, and it's just, it kind of sets the bar really high, so it's tough to get up there or even beat it. Perfect example would be True Detective with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. If you've seen that for Max, that's the example I like to use the most when it comes to season 1 was a masterpiece. It took the world by storm. It shattered all sorts of viewing records, and then season 2 came out, really let down. Season 3 was kind of back to what season 1 was about, but not quite on the same level. Season 4 with Night Country, we're getting back to it. Just still wasn't on that, and it's just really hard when you put that much energy and that much quality into the first season. It's really hard to get back there because everyone's going to compare to it. And it's not like they do it on purpose. It's just natural. We naturally go back to, it's not as good as season 1. They didn't do this, they didn't do that, they changed this, they went this way instead of that way. It's just the nature of the beast, really. So Wednesday is a victim of its own, of the sequel curse in a way when it comes to seasons. I believe it's confirmed for season 3 already, so we'll see. Maybe they can get the show back to where it was. But it's still a really fun season. The last, I'd say, 2 episodes is really what sticks out to me the most. Thing being a really big central part of those last couple episodes was really cool. That scene where he is getting attached to I gotta look up his name, the main villain of the story. It's the zombie thing that Pugsy came across. I am drawing a blank. It's not Steve Buscemi's in here. I think it was Xavier, maybe. But so the thing ended up being his hand, and then it got detached in that flashback scene where Wednesday's parents were involved in this story yet again, just like the first season. So they kind of did the rinse and repeat thing with season 2, with Wednesday's parents being the central characters of that story in the past, and then it kind of catches up to the present, and Wednesday has to deal with it. But that was a really cool scene where the thing was getting attached to his body, and then thing still kind of being there on its own detaches himself from the main villain of the season. But yeah, I mean, Steve Buscemi was good. It wasn't, his character wasn't as great as Gwendolyn Christie, who was the headmaster at Evermore in season 1. He's always going to be Steve Buscemi. It's kind of the curse he has to bear. It kind of takes you out of it a little bit. But he did a pretty good job as the headmaster. Tyler came back. He was the villain in the first season, so to speak. Enid is back, best friends to Wednesday. She is great. Emma Myers is fantastic and lovable. My favorite episode of the season would have to be where they body swap, where Wednesday goes into Enid's body and then Enid goes into Wednesday's, and they have to act like each other in order to kind of fool everybody and kind of deal with this for a day or two. Jenna Ortega as Wednesday, but it was Jenna Ortega playing Enid in Wednesday's Body was really cool. We've seen it a couple times in movies and shows with the body swapping. I know Supernatural was a big one when they body swapped. Smallville did one when they were body swapped. It's really cool when you get to really see the actors kind of stretch their wings a little bit and kind of portray what they see as their co-stars. So I gotta imagine that was probably the best shooting for Jenna Ortega and Emma Myers on the set was that day where they were body swapping. It seems like they had a lot of fun together doing that. Um, but yeah, overall, I think it was still a decent season for season two. Looking at the popcorn scale, I'm going to give it 4 popcorn buckets on the scale. Um, Season one, I think I had it as 5 popcorn buckets, so just a little bit of step down, but still a really good season to check out. If you haven't seen season two, definitely check it out, especially if you're a fan of season one. It's still a really good story to follow if you are a fan of the lore that Tim Burton has created in the Wednesday. Moving on to A Working Man, starring Jason Statham. This is currently on Prime Video if you're looking for something to watch at home. It's your typical Jason Statham movie. It's got him doing a lot of his own stunts. It's got him playing the hero, saving some damsel in distress or somebody. Former military turned kind of good Samaritan as a construction worker. He walks around with a pistol and sledgehammer for most of the movie. That's kind of his shtick, kind of like Beekeeper, which was a really good one. I believe David Ayer directed that one as well with Statham. So David Ayer and Statham are starting to kind of form this really cool director uh, star relationship, kind of like Leo and Martin Scorsese is. Um, but I love a good Jason Statham movie. It's a really cool turn your brain off for like an hour, 45 minutes on like Friday night and just kind of get lost in what Jason Statham does best, and that's doing stunt work. He's really good at fight choreography and playing this really, troubled former veteran in some kind of military service turned good Samaritan that's just trying to do his own thing and just gets sucked into this underbelly of whatever criminal organization is the center villain of the movie. You would think you would get tired of it, but I honestly don't. It's very similar to Beekeeper, um, but it kind of does its own thing aside from Beekeeper. But that would be a really cool double feature to watch is Beekeeper and then this, A Working Man. Just kind of running through the cast a little bit. It does have Michael Pena in there as the father of the girl that Statham has been hired to save. David Harbour from Stranger Things pops up as a what was lost my train of thought there. As kind of like military buddy of Jason Statham, who were in the same, I think, company or platoon when they were in the service. He plays a blind man, which is really cool to see David Harbour kind of play that character. Um, but yeah, it's really, this movie's really rooted in the action for it. The story is pretty simple. Like I said, a girl gets kidnapped. Statham gets hired because of his background. She is the daughter of the owners of the company that he works for in the construction business, and then he is tasked to go and save her. Um, but it's really cool. I like the action in it. On the popcorn scale, I gave it 3 popcorn buckets, so pretty modest ranking there for another Jason Statham movie. So definitely check it out on Prime Video if you haven't. And then the third one, which I was very excited to see and I was not disappointed in, was The Conjuring Last Rites. This is the final chapter in the Conjuring storyline. Now, I'm sure they're going to make different other spin-offs in this universe. Um, but this one, The Conjuring Last Rites, centers around the last case that Ed and Lorraine Warren conducted before they decided to retire. This case was really troublesome in their family life. I mean, their own daughter was involved in it, so I can understand why they stopped doing what it is that they do because of this case. And for those that aren't familiar with The Conjuring, this is based on actual events. Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren were real people that did, study, observe, and kind of converse with the spirits, demonic presences, or whatever you want to call them. They were hired by the church, on cases that the church deemed worthy enough to seek investigation. And then the priest would be called in to do a exorcism, or even Ed Warren did a few exorcisms in their day. I'm very interested in stuff like this. When I was going to college, I studied a lot about, demonic presences and exorcisms and all that stuff. Because when I was going to college, Paranormal Activity was a huge thing. Blumhouse was just starting to get going. And that's kind of like the bedrock of them, is like demonic possessions and all that in the studio. But I love the Conjuring series. It's got the Annabelle movies, the Conjuring movies. I think La Llorona is in there as well. And then, of course, the Nun movies are also in this canonic universe that they've kind of named the Conjuring universe. So definitely check out all those if you're into horror movies, or if you're just a Patrick Wilson fan, or you just kind of looking for a horror movie in general. This was very good. I think it was probably my favorite other than the first one. I think the first Conjuring is still hard to beat. But this is a really good second. And if I was going to rank the Conjuring movies, Patrick Wilson is a really underrated actor. And I think Vera Farmiga is as well. I love their portrayals as the Warrens. Especially Patrick Wilson, every time he says Lorraine, I really like it in that Patrick Wilson voice. He was also in Insidious, which is another really cool Blumhouse horror franchise that they kind of created. I think there was 5 of those movies. We did The Red Door on this show, actually, so go back and check out my review on that one. Insidious will be a movie that we will do on this show eventually. Probably save that for next Halloween, since the schedule is already full for this Halloween month. But yeah, definitely check out The Conjuring Last Rites. It is currently in theaters. I'm assuming within the next, I would hope by Halloween, since this is a Warner Brothers movie, this would be put on Max. So just in time for the Halloween season, you can go and binge the entire Conjuring universe. So I gave this one 4 popcorn buckets, which is really good for a horror movie, especially a sequel horror movie. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. It's one of the movies that I didn't realize that I was super excited about this year, and it's definitely kind of like a sneaky favorite of the year in the horror genre. So check out that in theaters today. So that'll wrap it up for the news and reactions for the day. Let's head over to our featured film, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, Extended Edition.
Legend tells of a ring created by an ancient evil that gave its wearer the power to enslave the world. Believed lost for centuries, it has now been found.
Is it secret? Is it safe?
This is the One Ring, forged by the Dark Lord Sauron. Sauron needs only this ring to cover all the lands of a second darkness. He's seeking it. Seeking it all. His thought is bent on it.
No one knows it's here, do they? Do they, Gandalf?
The weapon of the enemy is a gift. Let us use it against him.
You cannot wield it. None of us can.
The ring must be destroyed.
It was made in the fires of Mount Doom. Only there can it be unmade.
I know what I must do, but I'm afraid to do it.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
There is no other way. There's something down there. Yes.
Not nearly frightened enough.
So the Lord of the Rings is a trilogy that I watched on repeat as a kid. It came out the first one came out on December 19th, 2001. I believe I was living in Germany at the time. I remember seeing all the posters, the cereal boxes, the action figures. This movie was the biggest thing to happen since probably Spider-Man, which I think came out in the same year. Um, this movie blew my mind away when I first watched it. And then once this extended edition came out, it blew my mind anymore because we got to see the overall picture. Like I said at the top of the episode, I never read the books, so I was only exposed to the movies, and then the video games that came out afterwards along with the movies. But this is one of my favorite trilogies that I love diving back into. I think it's one of the best trilogies in movie history. It's right up there with the Star Wars trilogy, the original trilogy, the first three Indiana Jones movies, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and then Lord of the Rings are up there as well. It's just a really awesome universe to dive into, to kind of research and theorize and just kind of enjoy. There's so many different characters and different set pieces that you can talk about for hours upon hours. I mean, the cast list, which I'll run through here in a sec, is incredible, especially looking at their careers now in 2025 versus when they were in 2001. But this trilogy, I'm very, very excited to watch. I think it's probably been a good 3 or 4 years since I've seen these movies. The extended edition adds about, I think it's like a half hour to 40 minutes. The original cut of this movie was like 2 minutes under 3 hours. The extended edition, I think, is about 3 hours and 45 minutes. So it's a good chunk of scenes that they add in there. Scenes that are actually kind of important for the overall story and the flow of the movie. Of course, the theater's not going to release a 4-hour cut of a movie. Scorsese has tried to do that over the years. They kind of cap it at 3 hours. That's why I don't think they ever were going to like greenlit like Justice League to come out with that being 4 hours. There's no way that they're going to release a 3-hour, 45-minute cut of Lord of the Rings, even though I think they'd make a lot of money if they did. They would have to put in some kind of intermission and all that stuff. But I highly recommend that you watch the extended. I only watch the extended edition now. I've seen the theatrical so many times that I can easily spot which scene is extended and which scene is not. A lot of it kind of happens in the back half of the movie, especially the scene where they're giving the gifts out from Galadriel. A lot of that was added in there than the original cut. But I mean, the original cut is still really, really good. I just feel like the extended edition adds more to it, and you can appreciate it a lot more if you watch, the extra 40 minutes. I know when you watch, I've done this a couple of times where you watch all 3 movies in a single weekend. That's basically an entire Saturday. You're sinking into about 8 hours of content when you watch the extended trilogy in one swoop. I won't be doing that. I'm going to be breaking it up, one by week, just to kind of allow people to watch it and kind of let me kind of digest it a little bit and do research and all that, because I haven't read the books and I want to kind of dive into it a little bit. But I do love watching these back to back to back because it's such a really cool flow that they go into. They nicely flow into each other if you do a marathon on them. The Hobbit is a little different. They're a little more chapter by chapter by chapter. This one feels like more of like a really long 8-hour movie, the way that Peter Jackson made these. And it makes sense because they did film these 3 all together in one swoop. They just decided to do it every year or every other year to release them in theaters just for, post-production and editing and all that. But they did film all 3 of these movies in one big swoop over in New Zealand back in, I think it was like 1999 or 2000 or something that they were filming this in. But it's well worth the wait. 2001, it just took the world by storm. It was one of the biggest movies of the year, biggest movies of the I don't know, the first 10, 15 years of the 2000s. I mean, it still has a really big effect on everybody, you know, Comic Cons and comic books. They did an animated movie, I believe, last year, War of the Rohirrim. They have the Rings of Power show on Prime going on. So even after 24 years of this movie being out, they're still pumping out, you know, content of it. I hope they do more. The Rings of Power, I know, is a very controversial between a lot of fans, my dad included, who is a huge Lord of the Rings guy. He read all the books, even the Silmarillions, The Hobbit. He's seen all the movies multiple times. I believe he wasn't, I don't want to speak for him completely, but I don't think he was a fan of Rings of Power. Myself and my brother, we really enjoyed it. But I have high hopes that, you know, the Rings of Power can get back to what it felt to watch Lord of the Rings as a kid. Of course, you know, with, you know, woke Hollywood and all that, they're going to change some stuff in there, but at the core of it, it's still Lord of the Rings, and I love diving into Middle Earth and all that. That's why I'm super excited to finally read the books coming up. But these movies are really, really awesome. I love looking into it. So just kind of going through the summary of the movie a little bit. It's about a hobbit, Frodo Baggins of the Shire, comes across this ring of power, who is forged by Sauron in Mount Doom. He is tasked to basically take that ring, throw it into the volcano that it was made out of in order to destroy it. This spans through 3 movies. I believe the total span of it's like 3 years, if I remember right. That whole journey that it took him to get to Mount Doom and then back to the Shire, I think it was like 3 years. I'll research that. I'll talk about that more in Return of the King, since that's the final chapter of it. But if I remember at the top of my head, I think it was like 3 years it took them to destroy this ring, just because they're on foot and horseback. You know, they don't have planes or anything like that back in this world. But it's really cool. A really cool story. Characters that you fall in love with immediately. Aragorn's my favorite. I fell in love with him as soon as he came on screen. Viggo Mortensen is fantastic as Aragorn, son of Arathorn, who is the kind of the secret king of Gondor, but they kind of spoil that pretty early on in the show. So just kind of go through the cast list here. Frodo Baggins, Elijah Wood is the lead guy here. Elijah Wood is an actor that I grew up with, mainly because of Lord of the Rings, but he was in other things like Flipper. I think Flipper was the first movie I ever saw him in. That was a deep cut there. Flipper, if you remember that one, with Elijah Wood swimming with the dolphin. But he's going to be most known for is Frodo Baggins in Lord of the Rings, which he loves. He loves talking about Lord of the Rings. He loves talking about the sets and his experience. He's one of those actors that's really embraced that character that people recognize him as. Of course, he's gone on to do many, many other things. I believe he's in the Toxic Avenger coming up here this year. So he's still making movies after all these years. But he really fell in love with the character. He loves talking about his experience on set with Peter Jackson, the director, and then just kind of what he did. I believe a really good interview that he did was when he was on the Hot Ones with Sean Evans. If you've ever seen the Hot Ones, I'm going to plug that show right there on YouTube. Really good interview. Definitely check it out. He kind of goes into some of the behind the scenes that maybe some people don't know about. So he's a really good actor. I love him as Frodo Baggins. Moving on to the other star of the movie, Gandalf, played by Sir Ian McKellen. He's going to be known for Gandalf and then Magneto in the X-Men series. Sounds like he's coming back as Magneto, which is very exciting in Avengers Doomsday. But he's an actor that everyone has fallen in love with. He's been in so many different movies over the years. But he's going to be remembered for his role as Gandalf and as Magneto. I think I like Gandalf just a slightly bit more than his Magneto, but that is no bad feedback on his Magneto. I just really, really love his Gandalf. And I'll go through the rankings of how I rank the Fellowship in here in the last segment of today's episode. But Ian McKellen is fantastic as Gandalf. I mean, the scene that everybody remembers is that bridge scene where he goes up against the Balrog. And that whole line, I'll say the line when I get to favorite quotes because I want to save it for that. But it just, even watching it for the podcast today, it gave me goosebumps. And partially because of Ian McKellen's performance as Gandalf is so um, entertaining and inspiring, and it's just fantastic. I absolutely love Ian McKellen in this Lord of the Rings series. And then he even returns for The Hobbit, which is really, really awesome to see him play Gandalf in 6 movies, which is great. He's rumored to be in the Gollum movie coming up. So we'll get to see him back as Gandalf, hopefully, as well. So that's really, really cool. Some other hobbits that we run into: Samwise Gamgee, played by Sean Astin. Absolutely love Sam. I think he's like a fan favorite now, more so than Frodo, just because he's so honest and so lovable. And it's all due to Sean Astin's performance as Sam, especially in Return of the King, where he's got to carry Frodo up that mountain. But he's absolutely so innocent and awesome in this first movie. You could tell he loves to cook. He just wants to settle down with a nice woman, have kids, live that quiet, normal Shire life. But then he gets sucked into this adventure to destroy the ring, and he still has a smile on his face for most of the time. Frodo even said it best, where he goes, "Nothing dampens your spirits, Sam." And I love how he just calls him Mr. Frodo. It's only when he like yells in horror that he just yells Frodo. Most of the time when he's addressing Frodo, it's Mr. Frodo or something like that. So but Sean Astin is fantastic as Sam in this trilogy. I absolutely love him. The other 2 hobbits we meet are Pippin Took and Merry Brandybuck. Pippin is played by Billy Boyd. He gets a really cool scene in Return of the King that I'll talk about quite a bit, because it's one of my favorite scenes in the entire trilogy. Pippin's kind of he means well, but he's not very bright. The scene where he knocks over the bucket down the well and it causes a ruckus to wake up the goblins, or he volunteers to go as the Fellowship, and he has a really classic line of, "Where are we going?" He just kind of signs up for things, not knowing what's going on. He asks a lot about second breakfast. For those that don't know, hobbits eat like 6 times a day, which is kind of ridiculous for the small size that they are. But Pippin somehow finds a way to fit all 6 meals into his body. He is the cousin of Frodo, I believe, and so is Merry, played by Dominic Monaghan, who is really good. Another one who was in X-Men. I think he played in X-Men Wolverine Origins or X-Men Origins Wolverine as the electricity guy. He was also in Lost, but he is going to be most known for as Merry. So is Billy Boyd as Pippin. He's kind of the smarter one of the 2, Merry and Pippin, that I'm speaking of. But he still kind of gets himself into trouble a bunch of times. But he's kind of the smart and kind of common sense of the 2. But they're really lovable. Both cousins to Frodo, I believe. Then we have Aragorn, who is my favorite character of this world, played by Viggo Mortensen, who played in Hidalgo, and I can't think of anything else. I know he's been in a bunch of movies after that, but at the top of my head, I can only think of Hidalgo, where he's riding that horse through the Desert Storm, and then, of course, Aragorn, son of Arathorn in The Lord of the Rings. So I absolutely love his portrayal of Aragorn. He becomes the king of Gondor in The Return of the King. He is the guardian of Frodo. He would literally die for Frodo. And I love how they have this immediate bond with each other throughout this first movie, and then they get separated and they don't get to see each other until The Return of the King. But I absolutely love, and I'll go through some of I guess I can jump into one of the fun facts that I have, since it's centered around Viggo. He did all of his own stunts. He actually insisted on using only a real steel sword. He didn't want that plastic aluminum crap. He wanted to feel the weight of the sword when he was doing the stunts by himself. He wanted it to be as authentic as possible, which was really great. And I applaud Viggo for wanting to make this as authentic as possible. You can tell it too in the final product. They were on set. There's very little CGI in this movie. It's all makeup and costumes and practical sets, which is really, really awesome. And it's one of the many reasons why this trilogy is one of the best films ever created. because of the authenticity of it, the great performances from Mike Vigo and um, Elijah and Ian McKellen. So Aragon definitely my favorite character in this world, and I would love to see a solo Aragon movie. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Vigo has talked about maybe being open to it if there's a story there. But I watched Lord of the Rings for the story, but to see Vigo Mortensen as Aragon. Some other members of the Fellowship, we've got Legolas, played by Orlando Bloom, who is famous for a lot of roles. Legolas, he was in the Pirates of the Caribbean series as drawing a blank. Will Turner, he was in Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven, which I absolutely love. Was recently married to Katy Perry, now divorced, so he's been in the spotlight recently. I believe he's doing a Prime show, Carnival Row. But he's probably most known for is Pirates of the Caribbean and Lord of the Rings as Legolas. But I absolutely love his Legolas. There again, it sounded like he did a lot of the bow work himself. I love the Legolas character, who is this kind of honorable wood elf who, would die for even a dwarf, even though the dwarves and elves kind of have this big rivalry between each other. But he still finds it in his heart to protect Gimli because they've grown together, they've traveled together, and so on. So yeah, I absolutely love the Legolas character. He has a lot. I'll talk about him more in the 2000s and the Return of the King because I think Orlando Bloom gets a lot more work to do in there. He's kind of a side character in this first one. This was mainly Frodo and Gandalf in this first movie. But eventually we'll get into, more Aragon, more Legolas, and more Gimli in the other two films. So, but he's really awesome in here. And then speaking of Gimli, he is played by John Rhys Davies, who you probably recognize from the Indiana Jones series. He is actually one of the tallest. I think that was in another one of my facts here. Maybe not. But I did find this during the research that he is actually one of the taller of the cast, even though he plays a dwarf. He's like 6'1" or something like that, playing a very, very short dwarf. I love his Gimli. He's kind of the comedic relief in this trilogy. He has a lot of banter with Legolas, especially in the second and third film. But I love John Rhys Davies. I love I can just hear his voice, and it's just like, oh, great. John Rhys Davies is in here. It's going to be a blast. He's always a good time to watch, and I love his portrayal as Gimli. Then we have Boromir kind of rounding out the Fellowship, played by Sean Bean, who, if you haven't recognized or known, Sean Bean, 9 times out of 10 is going to die in a movie. I think now he's at the point of his career where in his contract it actually says you can't kill me off because I've been killed off so many times. But his death still hits me. Him protecting Merry and Pippin at the end, even though he tried to steal the ring from Frodo, was very honorable, and it still gets me every time. Sean Bean is fantastic as Boromir. I think he's a very, very underrated actor. He plays Boromir to a T, and it's incredible. I love his kind of his struggle, inner struggle that he deals with during this movie. You can tell that he means well, but he is more of like the brute force type of guy. But I really, really love Sean Bean's Boromir portrayal. And then some other cast members. We've got Elrond, played by Hugo Weaving, who you probably recognize from the Matrix series as Agent Smith. He's really cool as Elrond. We have Arwen, who is the love interest to Aragorn, played by Liv Tyler. She's fantastic. I love her. We have Galadriel, played by Cate Blanchett, who narrates the beginning of the movie. That is always awesome. We have Bilbo Baggins, who is the uncle to Frodo, played by Ian Holm. And then we have Saruman played by Sir Christopher Lee, who is not with us no longer. This is another fact that I'm stepping on, but he is the only member of this cast to actually have met J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote the books and created this entire world. So I believe he read The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit like every year. And from what I remember during the research, him and Peter Jackson worked together a lot because because, like I said, he was the only one that met J.R.R. Tolkien. He was a huge fan of the book series. So Peter Jackson leaned on Christopher Lee a lot for being authentic and as accurate as possible to the book. So that was really cool to see that. Since we've been talking about the facts, let's just kind of go over those real quick. I thought these were pretty interesting. Sir Ian McKellen, that scene where he hits his head on the beam in Bilbo's home, that was not scripted. That was pure accident, and Peter Jackson loved it so much that he left it in there. So that was really cool. The cast had to fly to various locations via helicopters since they were filming all over New Zealand. Sean Bean is actually scared of flying. So much so that he would climb through the mountains for 2 hours to get the set to film that snowy mountain scene. I believe it was an interview with Elijah Wood where he talks about how they would fly across the mountain range and they would see Sean Bean hiking up the mountain because he refused to fly to the locations. In costume. He was fully in costume, from my understanding, hiking up these mountains by himself to get to set. I mean, I get it. You're afraid of flying, but that's a lot of walking to do. And then you got to shoot for hours and hours. Man, that's got to. But hey, I applaud his dedication for the role. And then the last one I have here in the scene where the apples are being thrown at Pippin when asking about second breakfast, it was actually Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn himself, throwing those apples at him behind the camera. I thought that was really cool. It sounds like Viggo was having way too much fun doing that to Mr. Billy Boyd. Some other notes I had. Production. The set locations are fantastic. I love the cinematography. The score is so iconic, especially that opening scene where you get the Lord of the Rings title at the beginning. I just absolutely love the score in this trilogy. The makeups and costumes are incredible, especially Gandalf with the hat and the staff and the robes. Everybody's costume is so cool in here, and the makeup is just really awesome. I love all of it, especially the orcs and goblins. Like, those are real people. The orcs and goblins weren't really CGI'd. I think the only time they ever CGI'd them was like in the big war scenes in like Two Towers and Return of the King. Otherwise, they just had a bunch of extras on set that just dressed up as goblins and orcs. Even if it was like a 2-minute scene, they had hundreds of people dressing up in these goblins and orc makeup. It was really authentic. I applaud Peter Jackson for all of that. Some of the iconic scenes there's a lot of scenes I could talk about. I think I limited it to, what was it, 2, 4, 6. I think I had like 10 scenes here that I wanted to mention. The opening backstory with Galadriel's narration gives me goosebumps every time. Originally, it was supposed to be Frodo, was Peter Jackson's idea, but he eventually was like, Frodo wasn't alive, so how would he know the story? Just through word of mouth. Then he's like, okay, well, maybe Gandalf should do it. Well, Gandalf wasn't alive either. So that's where they lead to Galadriel, which I think was a great choice. Cate Blanchett has a really lovely voice, and I'm glad that they picked her for this opening, because this sets the tone for the trilogy, not just the first movie. It sets the tone for the entire trilogy. You know, like, this is the stakes. This is how it started. This is where we're at. You know, this is where men and elves and dwarves have been fighting through to get to this point in history. It's just really well done, really well written, and voice performed by Cate Blanchett beautifully. It's such an incredible, one of the best openings to a movie, to a trilogy ever, and it sticks in my head forever. I mean, even the video game did this, to where they had the scene of the movie and they cut to the video game. It's such a really awesome opening scene. I'm glad they went with Cate Blanchett for sure. The next scene I have was Bilbo using the ring at the birthday party. I believe it was his 111th birthday. So to give you kind of some context with the aging here, the aging's really off, because like Frodo is like, what was he, like 65, I think, in this movie? And please tell me if I'm wrong. I'm going at the top of my head on the research that I did. And I think Aragorn was like, what was he, like 75 or 80 years old during this? Gandalf was like in the hundreds, maybe even 1,000. I mean, Galadriel is probably like 3,000 years old. So the aging is really wonky in this universe, especially with the elves because of the power and the elf light and all that. Kind of makes, and I think there was an explaining. I think my dad explained it to me with Aragorn. He was around elves so much that he somehow possessed that power to live a little bit longer than most men. I think it was maybe it was the necklace that Arwen gave him. I need to research it. This is great podcasting right now. This is gonna bug me. Let's take a peek at the ages here. Okay, let's see what AI says here. Based on the results. So he lived to be 210 years old. He chose to die when he felt the onset of old age. Let's see. Does it explain why? I guess I can't find why. I think it had to do with the necklace that Arwen gave him, or maybe it was his time with the elves. I'll have to do a little more research, and I'll talk about that more. So I think they even talk about it in the Two Towers, so that'll be a topic that I'll bring up on the next episode. But I'm pretty sure it has something to do with his time with the elves or the necklace that Arwen. Because when Arwen gave him that necklace, she starts to lose her elven-like light or life. So then she starts, dying and all that. So, but she wanted it to protect Aragorn. She doesn't want him to die like a normal man. They want to spend as much time as they can together. So that's why I have the necklace in my hand, but I'll confirm that and talk about that on the next steps. But I got sidetracked there. So Bilbo, he uses the ring for the first time at his birthday party. Well, not the first time for him, but first time to us. So we can see what the ring does. When you put the ring on, it makes you go invisible and you can kind of sneak off. The thing is, though, is when you put that ring on, Sauron can actually see you because he's the one that created it. And he knows exactly where you are. So that's why Aragorn and Gandalf prefer Frodo not to put it on because they don't want Sauron to figure out what they're doing. But Sauron being all powerful and all that, he eventually catches on to what they're doing and tries to stop them. But that was a really cool scene, seeing like the power of the ring for the first time, especially as a kid. Like, oh, cool, this is a magic ring. It's going to turn Frodo invisible when he wears it. And Frodo does put it on occasion to hide or escape. That was a really cool effect on how they did that. The ring race at the Prancing Pony. I remember watching. So, to give you a little context, this isn't the first Lord of the Rings movie that was made. I know a lot of people think that this was like the first iteration of the books. It was not. Let me research the year on this. But they actually did animated versions of the Lord of the Rings, which I didn't see, of course, until after the movies came out. Okay, so the Lord of the Rings came out in 1978, and then they did one. So this one involved, I think this included just the Fellowship. They did The Hobbit by itself, and then they did The Return of the King, which I think combined Two Towers and Lord of the Rings. I really recommend watching those animated movies. They take a lot from the book, from what I understand. I watched them with my dad, and he told me that they're pretty accurate to the book. I don't know. They might be tough to find. I think I have The Hobbit. I'll have to track down the other two. But those are really cool to check out. I remember seeing that scene of the ring race, stabbing the beds in that animated movie, and then watching it in live action. It was like copy and paste. I think even a lot of the trailers included that scene of the ring race, stabbing the beds with the swords and the feathers flying around. The animated movie went really chaotic where they're like throwing the beds all over and there's feathers everywhere. And they kind of do that in here where a couple of ring race will flip the beds over, but not as like chaotic as the animated movie. But I still really like this scene. It's really cool, with the screeching of the ring race and then Aragorn and the hobbits watching across the way, and the way they shot it to where we have the ring race coming into the inn. You get shots of the hobbits sleeping in the bed, and when they draw the swords, you're like, oh crap, they're gonna kill these hobbits. When they start stabbing, you're like, oh shoot, they're dead. But then they cut over, and they're actually across the street in a different inn. It was really cool how Peter Jackson, like, cinematography did that to trick the audience into thinking that the hobbits were gonna die. So it was really cool. Kind of on the topic of the ring race still, we have that fight at, I think it's called Weathertop, between Aragorn and the ring race. This is where Frodo puts on the ring, disappears, and the ring race connects to see him too, kind of. And they stabs him with that Molko braid, poisoning him, and then he has to get taken to Rivendell. The first time that Frodo put the ring on was actually in the inn when he accidentally gets pushed over by, I think it's Pippin, and the ring kind of does that thing, and I have the ring right here, and it kind of flips it down. It was really cool effect how they did that. But when he goes invisible, it's really cool how the effect that Peter Jackson used, and you get the Eye of Sauron coming in, and sometimes it'll throw Frodo into Mount Doom and up into the tower. It's really cool effect how they do it with him putting the ring on. But the scene with Aragorn at Weathertop fighting these ring race, you really get to see how great a swordsman Aragorn really is. And Viggo Mortensen, he trained a lot in fighting for this movie, and it really shows because he's got really cool moves. He ends it with the classic throwing of the torch into the face of the ring race, which is really awesome. It's really, really awesome scene. I love it. We got Gandalf versus Saruman. This is where we get to meet Christopher Lee as Saruman, who was part of these big, powerful members of this secret council between Elrond, Galadriel, Gandalf, and Saruman. We kind of get to touch on that a little bit more in The Hobbit. But these two are really good friends. Saruman ends up turning over to the dark side to join Sauron. And this is where Gandalf finds out, and they have this cool wizard battle in the tower, and Gandalf gets thrown up to the roof to try to escape and save Frodo. But that was a really cool fight to see, how powerful Saruman is, even though Gandalf is caught off guard. But you really get to showcase how powerful he is. It was really cool. The forming of the Fellowship of the Ring in Rivendell. This is a really cool scene. One of my favorites, where you have the elves coming together, the dwarves coming together, the men coming together to discuss what to do with this ring. So it gets revealed that, hey, this ring's got to be destroyed in the mountain where it was created. So you have a lot of bickering back and forth. Boromir's like, well, the men need it to fight off the orcs. No, the dwarves want to just take an axe to it. The elves are like, we want nothing to do with this. So Frodo ends up volunteering, hey, I will do it. And I love Gandalf's facial expressions in here, where he just gets that sigh of no, this is not what I wanted. I don't want Frodo to do this. But he understands, Frodo is a very unique creature that is willing to do what is right, whether it's going to kill him or not. I just love that sigh of regret on Gandalf's face when Frodo goes, I will take it. And then everybody gets quiet, and he goes, I will take the ring to Mordor, but I do not know the way. And then that's where everybody goes, Gandalf's like, I will show you the way. Aragorn's like, by my life or death, I will protect you. You have my sword. Gimli goes, you have my axe. Legolas says, you have my bow. And then Boromir gives this little spear where he's like, you hold the fate of us all, little one. Gondor has your aid. And then the hobbits, Sam, Pippin, and Merry join in the Fellowship as well. It was a really cool scene. I love it. I love the setting too, with the leaves flying around, the elvish structures around them, and Hugo Weaving's really good as Elrond in there too. I really, really love it. The next scene I have on my list is the Fellowship versus the goblins and the troll in Moria. Really awesome fighting sequence. The goblin makeup is awesome. I love the screeching and the howling in the tunnels of Moria. Before we get into this, we get a really cool scene where they fight off this squid thing in the lake. And it takes Frodo up, and Boromir and Aragorn are hacking off the legs. Legolas is trying to shoot it in the eyeball with his arrow. So that was a really cool action sequence. But the fight scene in this one corridor of Moria where Gimli finds his cousin. I think his cousin leads Moria, ends up dying. Well, it turns out he died fighting these goblins. Like for a long time. Seemed like these goblins were taking over Moria for like hundreds of years or something like that, because all you see is these dwarf skeletons and all that. So it was a really cool fight sequence. Frodo gets stabbed by the troll. It gets revealed that he's wearing mithril, which is this it's kind of like chainmail, but even stronger, to where like you can't stab him whatsoever. It's really cool. But yeah, really good fighting in here. I really love that scene. Then we get the iconic Gandalf versus Balrog scene on the bridge of Khazad-dûm, I think. I'm gonna step on favorite quotes here because I just want to read the whole spiel that he gives during that fight. Let me pull it up here. Okay, so they get across the bridge. The Fellowship goes first. Gandalf stays back to hold off the Balrog, this big fiery creature that's living in Moria. And he puts up his staff to create this like magical bubble around him so he can protect himself. He goes, "You cannot pass. I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Andor. The dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Udun, go back to the shadow. You shall not pass." When this movie came out, everybody is like, "You shall not pass." Everybody, most quoted line in probably movie history. And it's by the performance of Ian McKellen that just sends goosebumps. Even just reading it right now, I had some goosebumps down my arm. Just the performance by Ian McKellen is what makes Gandalf such an iconic character and so beloved. It makes this scene so good. The Balrog pulls out his flame whip and he's whipping Gandalf's, little magical bubble. Gandalf ends up getting the idea of let's just destroy this bridge and send this thing down to the black hole. And that works. But as soon as Gandalf turns around, you see that whip coming off screen around his leg, yanking him down. And we get the final words of Gandalf the Grey, "Fly, you fools," as he is pulled down under the bridge. If you have not seen Two Towers, I won't spoil it for you. But when this happens, for me, not reading the books, not knowing what happens to Gandalf, I was mortified. I was shocked. Like, crap, they just killed one of my favorite characters off like halfway through the movie. So like the Moria scene's like halfway. Then you get to the woodland elves and then, the big battle of the orcs at the end. So like this is about halfway through the movie, I think. And then like, crap, they killed off Gandalf halfway through. This sucks. But it was a really cool death. One of the most iconic scenes in movie history. One of the most iconic deaths, period. So really, really well done by everybody involved. We got two more scenes here. Galadriel tempted by the ring. This will always be branded in the mind by the way Cate Blanchett performed this, where, she's given this test by the ring. She kind of turns gray and dark, and she's got this echo robotic voice where she's having this inner battle between the ring and her desires to have it. And she passes because she doesn't take the ring from Frodo, even though he offers it to her. This scene sticks in my brain just because of that voice that they gave Cate Blanchett and then the effects that they had on her. It was really, really cool. And then the last scene was Boromir protecting Merry and Pippin. Before this, we had the scene where Boromir tried to take the ring from Frodo. So you're like, Boromir's kind of a piece of crap. But he was just being tempted like any normal man. He was a weak-minded man. But as soon as he snaps out of it, he's like, "Oh, poor Frodo. I need to say sorry. I didn't mean to do that," but he doesn't get the chance to. So to kind of make up for that, he sacrifices himself when he protects his Merry and Pippin, which is really good. Even though he was tempted by the ring, still very gut-wrenching death, where he gets struck by 3 arrows. I think in the book and in the cartoon, it was like 7 arrows that he took. But of course, for time's sake and the ridiculousness of that for the movie, they kept it at 3, which I think was just fine. I don't think we needed to see Sean Bean take 7 arrows in the chest. I think 3 would have been just fine. But I really like this scene where you even get Merry and Pippin like realizing that Boromir sacrificed himself, and they even draw their swords and try to fight him off, but they get kidnapped, and we'll catch up with them in the Two Towers. While this is all going on, Frodo is trying to leave on his own. Sam goes into the water and almost drowns, so they get out. Frodo ends up saving Sam, and then so they're off on their own, and then Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli say their goodbyes to Boromir as he's dying, and then they go off to try to save Merry and Pippin. So the Fellowship is split up right now, and we will kind of reconvene with them in the Two Towers, and then they'll all regroup together in the Return of the King. So those are the scenes that I really stand out to me. We're going to whip through some of the other quotes I had, and then we'll kind of wrap things up with the changes from the books that I found doing my research. So I said the line, the famous line that Gandalf did already. Some more Gandalf lines. A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. Love that line. Another one, keep it secret, keep it safe. A buddy of mine from work, we always say that together. Really good. Hobbits really are amazing creatures, as he's talking to Frodo. They are. I love hobbits. They're really cool. They're very hopeful and charming and so innocent. They're really, really cool. Some more Gandalf. Fly, you fools. His last words as he was struck by the Balrog. All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you. Love that line. Very good life advice, too. You know, we have to decide what we want to do in this very small amount of time that we are on Earth. So, very, very wise words from Gandalf. And then the last one, and I didn't really talk about the ring itself. I'll talk about that more probably in The Return of the King because it's such a central part there. But so the subscription on the ring itself, I have my ring here, and it actually does have the inscribed on there. But it reads, one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness binds them. So basically saying, like, this is the ring to rule all rings. Like, it's the most powerful. It made Sauron such an invincible being. Kind of jumping back to that narration scene at the beginning of the movie, you could really see the power of the One Ring when Sauron has it on his finger with his hammer, and he's just whipping elves and men back and forth like they're pieces of paper. And of course, it turns people invisible when they wear it. So yeah, this basically saying this is the one ring to have, and you will rule the entire Middle Earth with it. So really, really cool. I got a Gimli quote here. Nobody tosses a dwarf, which he says a couple of times throughout the trilogy. Really funny there. If by my life or death I can protect you, I will. You have my sword. That's by Aragorn. This one from Pippin. Great. Where are we going? As he signs up for the Fellowship and not knowing what they're doing. Another one by Pippin. What about second breakfast? Really iconic line. I've seen many shirts with like, what about second breakfast? And it lists off like all 6 meals that the hobbits wear. So those are the lines that really stuck out to me. I'm sure there's 100 other quotes you could say from this movie, but those are, I think I had like 10 on there that I thought were the most iconic in this movie. So now to wrap things up, we've got the changes from the book that were put into the film. Now I checked these, I think I got 10 on this list. 2, 4, 6, I think I got 9. 9 on the list that I was able to confirm in multiple sources so that I can give you the most accurate since I have not read the books yet. But the first one, Boromir's death. He actually dies in Two Towers. He does not die in the Fellowship. He dies in Two Towers. I like this change a lot. I think Peter Jackson even has explained this reasoning was he wanted to bookend this movie with Boromir's death to just kind of leave the audience kind of in like depressed, no hope phase. I think it was a good choice to end it. It kind of leaves it on a bummer note, and then we go into Two Towers. But I like the decision. I'm not mad about it. You know, I haven't read the book, so I'm not too attached about it. I don't know how everybody else feels about that change, but I respect the change. I understand the change, and I like it. I like bookending this movie on Boromir's death. It kind of like sets the stakes. Like, hey, anybody can die in this movie. I mean, Gandalf dies halfway through, and he's like the main character almost. So I like the tone that it sets with putting Boromir's death at the end of the first movie instead of bringing it to like the beginning of the Two Towers, I think is where it happens. The next one, Sam actually looks in Galadriel's mirror too. It's not just Frodo. We get that scene in the Woodland realm with Galadriel and Frodo. He's looking through this bowl of water to the future of the Shire if he fails. Actually, Sam is the one that sees what happens to the Shire in that bowl, not Frodo. So I thought that was an interesting change. Aragorn's gift. Aragorn actually receives a elf stone from Galadriel in the book. In the movie, Peter Jackson made it to where Aragorn's gift, and Galadriel even mentions this, like, oh, I see you already have a gift, is the necklace from Arwen, because Peter Jackson really wanted to focus on that romance between Aragorn and Arwen. Even though the books, from my understanding, does show a lot of that romance, Peter Jackson really wanted to focus their bond, and making that necklace Aragorn's gift was the reasoning behind it. So I thought that was interesting. Another one about Arwen, she actually doesn't defeat the Ringwraiths in the book. In the book, it is an elf named Glorfindel. I probably butchered the crap out of that, but he actually defeated the Ringwraiths in the book on that scene where Arwen summons the water horses and floods them away when she's protecting Frodo. So that wasn't her. Peter Jackson just like, why add another character when we can add more scenes with Arwen and Aragorn? Which I totally understand. Frodo versus the Ringwraiths on Weathertop. Frodo actually fights back on the Weathertop. He doesn't put the ring on in fear and gets stabbed. I guess in the book, he actually fights them off before he gets stabbed. That would have been really cool to see. I kind of wish they would have kept that in there. Tom Bombadil, the famous character that didn't show up until Rings of Power. He actually saves the hobbits from Barrow Wights. Probably they're some kind of creature. That entire scene was cut from the film. So Tom Bombadil actually meets the hobbits on their journey before they run into Aragorn, I guess. I think Peter Jackson's talked about why he didn't want Tom Bombadil. So I don't know a whole lot about him. And please correct me if I am wrong in the comments. But from my understanding, Tom Bombadil is like the super powered creature in this universe. Like the most powerful. Rings of Power introduces him in there. But I guess Peter Jackson didn't want a character or didn't have any use for a character like that in the movies. So that entire Tom Bombadil subplot with him meeting the hobbits was entirely cut from the film. And then they eventually use him in the Rings of Power show. The hobbits bumping into the elves in the woods, that was changed. So in the movie, we see Frodo and Sam. Now, this is in the extended edition. They're kind of watching the elves kind of walk through the woods as they go to their final place. This was not in the original cut of the movie. This was entirely cut out. Sam and Frodo, don't meet an elf until they meet Arwen in the theatrical cut. But in the extended cut, they do see these elves walking through the forest, and that's where they first see them. 17 years passed between Bilbo's birthday and Frodo leaving the Shire. Now, for obvious reasons, Peter Jackson wasn't going to go through 17 years. He just kind of, it makes it seem like Frodo left like maybe a couple months after Bilbo left. But the fact that, Gandalf went off to meet Saruman, he was trapped there, like 17 years. That is a long time for that ring to be sitting in Baggins. I did not realize that until I did the research for this movie. That changes everything when I watch this movie again. That 17 years passed from the moment that Gandalf says, keep it safe, keep it hidden, and to when he comes back and says, is it secret? Is it safe? 17 years. That is a long time. Like, how did Frodo not have a wife or kids by that time? That's crazy. And then the last one I have is the Sauron prologue. This was not the prologue in the book. This was Peter Jackson setting up backstory for the story, which I really really like. But in Tolkien's book, he provided the prologue, just describing the world of the hobbits, getting to know them emotionally, investing time in the hobbits, and just kind of giving you familiar with the hobbits and their day-to-day life, what's the Shire like, stuff like that. So I like the prologue in the movie, but I would have been fine with a prologue about hobbits too, because I love hobbits. So I really don't have a preference either there, but that's what's in the book, is just kind of exposing the reader to the world of the hobbits before they kind of jump into Frodo and that. So those are the changes that I found. I'm sure there's a lot more changes or things cut out from the movie, but those are the ones that I could confirm and the ones that I thought were the most interesting. So, but yeah, I absolutely loved Fellowship of the Ring. I love the extended edition. Definitely watch that one. But I understand if you don't want to sit through 3 hours and 45 minutes, if 3 hours is long enough for you, by all means, go watch the theatrical. You'll just be missing some really cool scenes in there. But yeah, I absolutely love it. It's a movie that I love. I'm going to start watching this, I think, every year now. I used to go like 3 or 4 years in between just so I can build up hype and stuff. But I think now, after kind of going through this trilogy for the show, I'm going to start adding this to my yearly schedule and just rewatching this once a year. Maybe like September time, I'll do that, because it feels right now. Like, summer's kind of over. Autumn is going to be coming here. Winter will be coming up here shortly. So it seems, because like winter is like Harry Potter time. I always watch Harry Potter in December. I think September is going to be Lord of the Rings time. It feels right. So I'm really glad that I'm rewatching these for the podcast, because it's got me really really hyped to read the books finally and to learn more about this universe than just what's in the movies. But yeah, I absolutely love Fellowship of the Ring. It's one of the best movies ever made. This trilogy. Let me look at the awards real quick before we skip over to the rankings. Return of the King knocked out a lot of the awards, so we'll talk about that. But it did win a bunch of awards too for the Fellowship. Best score, which well deserved there. Best makeup, well deserved. Best cinematography, well deserved. And then it was nominated by a bunch of other ones. I wonder if they got nominated for picture, maybe. Best writing, oh, that's a shame. It should have won. Best director should have won. Best actor for Ian McKellen should have won. It was nominated for best picture. That's a shame that it didn't win that. But so it's got 3 Oscars under its belt. I think Return of the King got like 11, if I remember right, or like 11 nominations and like 5 winners, I think. But anyways, it's a fantastic movie. I can't wait to watch The Two Towers and finish up with the Return of the King. Return of the King is my favorite. I'll just spoil that right now. I look forward to watching Return of the King every time I do this trilogy. But yeah, this is a phenomenal movie. If you haven't seen this movie in a long time, go fire it up tonight. Cook some popcorn, get some M&Ms, and just binge, 3 hours of Fellowship. It's really awesome movie. I absolutely love it. So like we do on every episode, let's head over to the rankings and let's rank the Fellowship of the Ring. All right, to wrap things up, we will rank the 9 members of the Fellowship, and then I will give my popcorn scale ranking for the Fellowship of the Ring. So starting at 9, this is where I put Boromir. He's the weakest link of the group. He tries to take the ring from Frodo, and he just gets corrupted really easily. So that is why I got Boromir on the bottom. Now this is where it gets kind of tricky. So at 8, this is where I put Pippin, because he's the one that knocks over the bucket and wakes up the goblins. He reveals that Frodo is Frodo Baggins and not Mr. Underhill in the bar of the Bronze Pony. He's constantly asking about when can we eat, when's second breakfast, yada yada yada. And he's just kind of a dummy. He's signing up for a fellowship that he doesn't know what's going on. He has a famous line going, "So where are we going?" He's just kind of an airhead. So that's why I got him at number 8. But I love Billy Boy. I love his portrayal as Pippin. 7, this is where I got Merry. Just kind of he's much smarter than Pippin, but he's still kind of a loose cannon because of the whole fireworks thing at the beginning of the movie. So I got him at 7 just because he's a loose cannon. 6, Gimli's a good fighter. It's gonna make me really sound like an asshole, but I mean the guy is what 4 feet tall, so I mean he's kind of a liability. I mean he almost falls on the bridge, and Legolas has got to grab him by the beard. So that's why I got him at 6, just because he's kind of a liability, even though he is a pretty decent fighter. I'll give him that. Sorry, John Rhys Davies, and all the short people out there. Nothing personal. Number 5. This is where I got Samwise Gamgee. Not a really good fighter. I mean, he held his own with the pan, knocking out the goblins. But I mean, he can't swim. He nearly drowns, but he watches Frodo, and he's got a really strong will. So that's why I got him at number 5. Now this is where it kind of gets tricky. 4 is where I got Legolas. He's got some bow action. He's got that elvish sight where he can see miles away. He just doesn't get a lot to do in here, even though he's probably the most skilled other than Aragorn. But he's at number 4 for me. Number 3, this is where I put Frodo. I mean, he's the star of the show. He's got to wear the ring. He's got to take that burden to Mordor. Not really a fighter, not really smart. He's courageous. So I got him at 3, though. I really love Elijah Wood as Frodo Baggins. 2, now this is tough, but 2 is where I put Gandalf. I love Aragorn so much that he has got to be my number 1, but Gandalf I have at number 2, mainly because of Ian McKellen's portrayal of him. Well, of course, he's a wizard, so he's got magic, so he's going to be the most powerful of his group. He's been around for a long time, so he has all the history and knowledge. But he wasn't able to solve the riddle. Frodo was, so maybe I should put Frodo. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to put Frodo above Gandalf just because he got a riddle right. But yeah, Gandalf is that number 2. I absolutely love Ian McKellen as Gandalf, and he's a powerful wizard, so he's got a lot to bring to the table. And then Aragorn is at number 1. Awesome swordsman, future king of Gondor. I love Viggo's portrayal of Aragorn. He's the most honorable man in Middle Earth. He's willing to die for a hobbit that he met in 2 seconds. He is in love with Arwen, who they have a really good bond together. I really love the Aragorn character. He's really awesome. To me, he's the star of this movie for me. Viggo is just insanely good as Aragorn. I absolutely love him. So that's my ranking for the 9 members of the Fellowship. I will post that on social media. And then now with the I kind of spoiled it there. With the popcorn bucket scale, I'm giving the Fellowship of the Ring Extended Edition the golden popcorn bucket. It's just beautifully well done. The cinematography, the score, the costumes, the makeup, the performances by the cast, the writing by Peter Jackson, the directing, the set locations. It's staying as accurate to the book as much as it can, honoring J.R.R. Tolkien and as much as it can. But yeah, Fellowship of the Ring, golden popcorn bucket, 10 times out of 10. It's an incredible film. I just absolutely love it. Awesome. So that is my ranking. I'll post that on social media as well. Well, that's going to wrap it up for part 1 of our Lord of the Rings Extended Edition series. Next time, I will be talking about the Two Towers Extended Edition, and then we will wrap up the trilogy with the Return of the King Extended Edition in part 3 of this Lord of the Rings series. So check out all the episodes, youtube.com/The Cinematic Reviews. Also listen to the audio versions on whatever platform you prefer. And then go ahead and follow the show on social media to support it. And let me know how I did on my Lord of the Rings lore. It was a lot of fun researching. I'm going to do a lot of research for Two Towers and Return of the King just so I can get more familiar with it. But yeah, this is going to be a fun series. I'm excited for the next 2 episodes of the show. So until then, remember to do what you want to do in the time that you have. And don't let anybody touch that ring. It needs to get destroyed. Don't be corrupted by it. Later, everyone.